Today, Morgan and I are delivering a big catering order to the university. Let us take you behind the scenes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here at 9 o'clock. I'm Anthony Antoine. Tonight, we are learning more about the family killed in a suspected murder-suicide in River Oaks. Family identified the father as 52-year-old Matthew Mitchell, the mother as 39-year-old Thea Mitchell, and their two kids, an 8-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy, who were both shot and killed as well.
There is a specific kind of danger that lives behind a perfect life, not the kind you can see from the outside. Not the kind that shows up in police reports before it's too late. The kind that hides behind restaurant awards and television appearances and pregnancy announcements. Thea Mitchell was 39 years old, pregnant, celebrated, and ascending. And she died in her own home, in silence, in a neighborhood where nobody expected anything to go wrong, because nothing ever looked like it was. The call that broke this case open wasn't a 911 call. It was a babysitter. Worried. Just worried enough. She hadn't heard back, and something about that silence didn't sit right. So she made a call. A family member echoed the same concern. Houston police sent officers to 2113 Kingston Street in River Oaks, one of the wealthiest, most manicured neighborhoods in Texas, expecting to find nothing unusual. What they found instead was a woman, a man, an 8-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old boy, all dead, all gone since Sunday night. And the city outside that door had not noticed a single thing. No forced entry. No chaos spilling into the street. Just silence behind a closed door in a neighborhood where silence is normal. And that, right there, is what makes this case so deeply unsettling before we even get to the details. Before we go any further, if you believe that victims like Thea Mitchell and her children deserve more than 30 seconds on a news ticker, that their story deserves to be told fully and carefully, stop right now and hit that like button. Subscribe to Mystoracrimes. Ring that bell. This channel exists because real people deserve real attention. Thea was a real woman. Her children were real children. The least we owe them is to not look away. Now let's go back to Houston, and let's go deep. River Oaks is the kind of neighborhood that signals arrival. Old money, new money, generational wealth living side by side with fresh success. It is manicured and quiet, and deeply private. And the Mitchell family fit the picture of that world so completely that nobody standing outside their life would have had any reason to look twice. Thea Mitchell grew up in Houston, the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants who built their livelihood around food and community. From the time she was a child, she was in that restaurant, not as a bystander, but as a participant, learning the rhythms of service, the discipline of running a kitchen, the particular kind of resilience that comes from watching your parents build something from nothing. That upbringing didn't just inform her career. It became her identity. She didn't stop there. She pushed. University of Houston for her undergraduate degree. Penn State for her master's. She was strategic, intentional, and deeply serious about the life she was constructing. When she eventually stepped into restaurant ownership, it didn't look like a leap. It looked like someone arriving exactly where they were always headed, together with her husband Matthew. She built Traveler's Table, a globally inspired Houston restaurant that drew from cuisines and cultures across the world and planted them firmly in the heart of Texas. The concept was an extension of who Thea was. Curious, adventurous, always reaching toward the next thing. Guy Fieri brought his diners, drive-ins, and dives cameras through the door. The Houston food community embraced it fully. They later launched Traveler's Cart. A clothing line followed in 2023. Travel-inspired apparel, another expression of the same restless creative energy. And just months before her death, the Houston chapter of the Texas Restaurant Association named Thea and Matthew their 2025 Restaurateurs of the Year. She had been invited to join the association's board. She was pregnant with her third child. Days before she died, she hosted 50 colleagues at her restaurant for a board meeting, and by every account in the room, she was electric. Craig Howard, the association's chapter president, said she was a bright star. Chef Jassi Bindra, who had been planning collaboration dinner with her, described her as energetic and fully alive in her work. Her PR team called her a devoted mother, a businesswoman, a woman always on her own journey. This is who thy Mitchell was. Not a footnote, not a supporting character in someone else's story. A woman building something real, something visible, something that was clearly just getting started. So now we have asked a question that sits at the center of everything. How does a woman at that exact moment in her life end up dead inside her own home while the city around her keeps moving? Matthew Mitchell, 52, was not a simple figure either. His biography reads like a man who had lived several lives inside one. Emory University graduate, studied in France, Italy, England, worked as a journalist and writer in London, Paris, and New York City. Then a full pivot. 14 years as a pharmaceutical executive before leaving that world entirely to open Traveler's Table. That is a significant amount of reinvention for one person. And again, reinvention alone is not a warning sign, but it is a data point worth holding. In a 2024 television appearance on Great Day Houston, the couple sat together and talked about Traveler's Cart, their newest venture. They looked comfortable, aligned, two people who had built something together and were proud of it. There was nothing in that footage, nothing visible, that would make you rewind and say, something is off here. That invisibility is the part that haunts this case. Houston Police Department named Matthew Mitchell as the suspect. Based on evidence found at the scene, investigators concluded that Matthew shot their 8-year-old daughter, shot their 4-year-old son, and then shot himself. The shooting is believed to have occurred Sunday night. The bodies weren't found until Monday evening, meaning nearly 20 hours passed between the moment that family was silenced and the moment anyone came looking. That is the official conclusion. That is where the investigation currently points. But here is where I need to slow down, because this case is still active. The Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences was still working through formal identification of the victims as of Tuesday. The full forensic picture has not been publicly released. And in true crime, we have seen cases, more than once, where the initial framing of a scene shifted significantly once the complete evidence came in. So I want to present something to you, not as fact, not as accusation, but as a legitimate question that any rigorous examination of this case has to at least hold space for. What if Matthew Mitchell was not the one who pulled the trigger? Stay with me, because this is not about excusing anyone or protecting anyone. It is about following the evidence wherever it goes, which is what justice actually requires. Consider the profile of the home. River Oaks, wealthy, visible family. Restaurant owners with public profiles, media coverage, award recognition. That kind of visibility does not only attract admirers, it can attract resentment, business disputes, financial entanglements that never make it into press releases. We do not yet know the full state of the Mitchells' finances, their business relationships, or whether there were any disputes, debts, or conflicts operating beneath the surface of their public success. Consider the layout of what was found. 4 people dead. The official read is that Matthew killed 3 family members and himself. But here is a question forensic investigators always have to answer in these scenes. Can the physical evidence definitively confirm the sequence and the shooter? Gunshot residue, bullet trajectories, entry and exit wounds, the position of each body. These are the details that either lock conclusion in place or leave it open. And publicly, we have not been given that level of forensic detail yet. Consider the entry point. No forced entry was reported, but the absence of forced entry does not mean an outsider could not have entered. It means there was no visible sign of forced entry. Those are different statements. Someone known to the family, someone with a key, someone let inside willingly on a Sunday night. That person would leave no broken window, no kicked door, no evidence of intrusion. They would simply be gone by the time anyone arrived 20 hours later. And consider this. Matthew Mitchell was a former pharmaceutical executive, a journalist, a man with an extensive network built across multiple cities and multiple industries over several decades. We don't know what that network looked like up close. We don't know what relationships, rivalries, or histories existed beneath the polished exterior. None of this is evidence. I want to be absolutely clear about that. This is a framework of possibility, the kind of thinking that good investigators apply before they close a door. And to be fair, murder-suicide within a family unit, what researchers call familicide, is a documented and studied phenomenon. It follows consistent psychological patterns: a perceived loss of control, a sense of catastrophic collapse, financial, emotional, relational, a decision made in private that removes choice from everyone in the perpetrator's orbit. The behavioral profile exists. It is real, and the official conclusion may ultimately prove entirely correct. But until the full forensic report is public, until we know the financial state of the business, until we understand a complete picture of what was happening inside that marriage and inside those business relationships, the door to other possibilities should remain open, not out of conspiracy, out of rigor, because thy Mitchell deserves rigor. Her children deserve it. A conclusion reached too quickly, framed too neatly, closed too soon, that is not justice. That is convenience. And here is what brings me back to thy every single time I sit with this case. She had just hosted 50 people in her restaurant. She had a board meeting scheduled. She had a collaboration dinner being planned. She had a baby coming. She was not a woman who appeared to be retreating from her life. She was running toward it. The psychology of victims in familicide cases sometimes, not always, but sometimes, includes a period of growing independence that the other partner experiences as destabilizing. A woman stepping more fully into her own identity, her own recognition, her own power. Again, this is documented in the research. Again, it is not confirmed fact in this specific case, but it is a kind of behavioral context that investigators look at when trying to understand the emotional architecture of what happened. What we know for certain is simpler and more devastating than any theory. Thy Mitchell was alive on Sunday. Her children were alive. And by Monday evening, a babysitter's worry was the only thing that made anyone look. 20 hours of silence in one of Houston's most prominent neighborhoods. 20 hours during which the city kept moving. The restaurants presumably kept running, and nobody looked through that door. That silence is its own kind of evidence, not of who did this, but of how completely a family can disappear even when they are surrounded by community, success, and visibility. That gap between a public life and a private reality, that is what this case keeps forcing us to stare at. So I want to leave you with the questions that I think matter most right now, and I genuinely want your perspective in the comments, because this community thinks carefully and I learn from what you bring. Do you think the official conclusion will hold once the full forensic report is released? Is there anything about this scene, the timeline, the neighborhood, the absence of any public distress signals from I, that makes you want to keep other possibilities open? And if it does turn out that Matthew Mitchell was responsible, what do you think was happening beneath the surface of that marriage that nobody around them could see? What would it have taken for I, at the height of her success, surrounded by colleagues and community, to have asked for help if she needed it? And the hardest question of all, what does it say about the lives we build in public, the faces we show the world, that someone could be celebrated on a Tuesday and gone by Sunday, and the city doesn't notice until a babysitter makes a phone call? Leave your theory in the comments. Tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what doesn't sit right with you. Every comment gets read. Every perspective matters here. And if this story stayed with you, subscribe to Mystoracrimes right now. Hit that bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We are here every week going deeper than the headline, sitting with the cases that demand more than a scroll past, telling the stories of people whose names deserve to be spoken out loud. T. Mitchell, her daughter, her son, her unborn child. We say their names here. We don't look away. See you on the next one.